The number 6 train screeched into the station at 8:47 p.m. And Jamal Washington felt every one of his 37 years in his bones. His work boots dragged against the platform as he climbed the stairs to street level. Shoulders hunched forward from 12 straight hours of lifting boxes at the Brooklyn warehouse. His second shift had just ended, and all he wanted was to get home to Destiny, his 9-year-old daughter waiting with Mrs. Chen next door. Manhattan's evening rush still clogged the sidewalks, even at this hour. Business people in expensive suits rushed past, phones glued to their ears. Street vendors called out last-minute deals. Car horns blared in an endless symphony of impatience. Jamal barely registered any of it anymore. This was just the soundtrack of survival, the background noise of a single black father working 2 jobs to keep a roof over his daughter's head. He stopped at a corner bodega, the fluorescent lights harsh against his tired eyes. The sandwich he'd brought from home sat untouched in his lunch bag, saved for tomorrow to stretch the grocery budget another day. But Destiny had texted earlier about a school project, so he grabbed a pack of poster board and colored markers. $13 he hadn't planned to spend. He handed over the cash without complaint, because that's what fathers do. Back on the street, Jamal checked his phone. If he caught the next bus in 6 minutes, he'd be home by 9:20. Destiny would still be awake. They could talk about her day before she went to bed, maybe laugh about something silly that happened at school. These small moments were all he had left of joy since Rashida died 3 years ago. That's when he saw her. A white woman in her early 50s, maybe 100 feet ahead. Designer suit, the kind that probably cost more than his monthly rent. She'd stopped walking and was leaning heavily against a building, one hand pressed flat against the brick wall. Her other hand clutched at her chest like she was trying to hold her heart inside her body. Jamal slowed his pace, watching. Maybe she was just tired. Maybe she'd had too much to drink at some corporate dinner. Maybe it was none of his business, and he should just keep walking like everyone else on this street seemed to be doing. But something in the way she moved, the desperate quality of her breathing, made him stop. The woman's knees buckled. She collapsed onto the sidewalk like a puppet with cut strings, her leather briefcase skidding across the concrete. Her body convulsed once, twice, then went terrifyingly still. Even from this distance, Jamal could hear the terrible gasping sound she made, fighting for air that wouldn't come. The crowd didn't stop. People stepped around her, some glancing down with mild curiosity before moving on. A teenager pulled out his phone and started recording, probably already thinking about the views he'd get. A businessman in a gray suit looked at his watch and kept walking. Not his problem. Not anyone's problem. Jamal's lunch bag hit the pavement. His legs were moving before his brain caught up, pushing through the flow of pedestrians, his heart hammering against his ribs. No, not like this. Not again. Not when he could do something. The memory of finding Rashida on their kitchen floor 3 years ago flashed through his mind, but he shoved it down deep. This time would be different. He dropped to his knees beside the woman, the rough concrete biting through his work pants. Up close, he could see the grayish tint to her skin, the way her lips had started to turn blue. Her eyes were wide open, terrified and unfocused, looking at something beyond this world. She was dying right here on a crowded Manhattan sidewalk, and nobody cared. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" His voice came out steadier than he felt. "Ma'am, I'm going to help you." She didn't respond. Her chest barely moved. Jamal looked up at the crowd, at all these people in their expensive clothes with their important places to be. Someone call 911 now. Nobody moved. They just stared at him like he was putting on a street performance. Call 911 right now. A young woman in yoga pants finally pulled out her phone, her hands shaking as she dialed. Jamal's training kicked in, the mandatory CPR certification the warehouse required every year. He'd sat through those classes half asleep most times, never thinking he'd actually use it. never thinking he'd be the one fighting to save a stranger's life while hundreds of people walked past. He tilted the woman's head back, checked her airway, and placed his hands in the center of her chest, one over the other. Push hard, push fast. 30 compressions, 2 breaths. Don't think about anything else. Don't think about Rashida. Don't think about the crowd watching. Don't think about being late to pick up Destiny. Just count and push and breathe. His arms burned as he pumped her chest, counting silently. The woman's body jerked with each compression, her designer jacket bunching up beneath his hands. Sweat dripped down his temple despite the cool evening air. 1, 2, 3, 4. The memory hit him without warning. Rashida on the kitchen floor, her body already cooling by the time he'd found her. The aneurysm had been instant, the doctor said later. Nothing anyone could have done. But Jamal had tried anyway, screaming and pumping her chest until the paramedics physically pulled him away. This time would be different. It had to be. 15, 16, 17. Where's the ambulance? Someone in the crowd asked. Is she dead? Another voice said. Should he be doing that? He doesn't look like a doctor. Jamal blocked them out. 28, 29, 30. He bent down, gave 2 rescue breaths, and went back to compressions. His shoulders screamed in protest. His hands were going numb. The woman's expensive jewelry caught the streetlight. Diamonds that probably cost more than he made in a year. None of it mattered. Rich or poor, black or white, everyone's heart stopped the same way. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. The crowd parted as 2 paramedics rushed through with their equipment, a stretcher rattling behind them. I got a pulse, Jamal said, his voice rough with exhaustion. Weak, but it's there. The lead paramedic, a Hispanic woman with kind eyes and quick hands, immediately took over. Her name tag read, Martinez. Good work, Martinez said, attaching monitoring equipment. How long was she down? Jamal tried to catch his breath. Maybe 2 minutes before I got to her. I did CPR for about 3 or 4 minutes before you arrived. Martinez looked up at him briefly, something like respect in her expression. You saved her life. What's your name? Jamal Washington. But Martinez was already focused back on her patient, calling out vital signs to her partner. They worked with practiced efficiency, loading the woman onto the stretcher. Within 90 seconds, they were pushing her toward the ambulance, and Jamal watched them go, feeling strangely empty. He stood up, his knees cracking in protest. His hands were still shaking. He looked down and saw the woman's briefcase lying on its side, papers scattered around it. He gathered them up quickly, his fingers clumsy with adrenaline, and handed them to Martinez just as they were loading the stretcher. Thank you, Martinez said again. You should be proud. Then they were gone, the ambulance screaming away into Manhattan traffic, its lights painting the buildings red and white. The crowd dispersed immediately, the show over. Within 30 seconds, the sidewalk looked exactly as it had before, like nothing had happened at all. Like a woman hadn't almost died. Like Jamal hadn't just fought to save a stranger's life. He bent down and picked up his lunch bag. The sandwich inside had been crushed when he dropped it. The poster board for Destiny's project poked out at an awkward angle, one corner bent. His hands wouldn't stop trembling. He walked to the bus stop on autopilot, his mind replaying the last 10 minutes on an endless loop. He collapsed onto the hard plastic seat and pulled out his phone. 9:14. He'd missed his bus. His fingers moved across the screen. Daddy will be home a little late, baby girl. Love you. Destiny's response came immediately. Okay, Daddy, I finished my homework. Love you too. That heart emoji. His 9-year-old daughter still wasn't too cool to use heart emojis. Jamal stared at the message, at that little red heart, and felt his throat tighten. Somewhere in this city, that woman was fighting for her life in an emergency room. Doctors would be working on her, running tests, making decisions that would determine whether she saw tomorrow. And here he was, just trying to get home to his daughter. He'd probably never know if the woman survived. That was okay. He'd done what he could, what Rashida would have wanted him to do. That had to be enough. The next bus pulled up. Jamal climbed aboard, found a seat near the back, and watched Manhattan slide past the window. All those lights and lives and stories he'd never know. 3 days passed. Jamal went back to his routine, warehouse shifts, helping Destiny with homework, trying not to think about bills he couldn't pay. He never thought about the woman on the sidewalk again. Why would he? She was probably some executive with great insurance, probably already back to her life. Their worlds had touched for 5 minutes, and now they'd never intersect again. Except they would. Because Catherine Sterling didn't forget the face of the man who'd saved her life. Catherine opened her eyes to white ceiling tiles and the steady beep of machines. Her chest ached like someone had parked a truck on it. Her throat felt raw. For a moment, she had no idea where she was or why everything hurt. Then it came rushing back, the crushing pain in her chest, the sidewalk rising up to meet her, strong hands pressing against her sternum, a calm voice cutting through her panic. Miss Sterling. A woman's face appeared above her. African American, late 40s, wearing a white coat with a stethoscope draped around her neck. I'm Dr. Williams, head of cardiology. You're at Mount Sinai. You've been here for about 6 hours. Catherine tried to speak, but her mouth was too dry. Dr. Williams held a cup of water with a straw to her lips. Small sips, the doctor said. Your throat's going to be sore from the intubation. After a few sips, Catherine managed to croak out, "What happened?" Dr. Williams pulled up a chair, her expression serious but kind. You had a massive heart attack. Technically, you were clinically dead for about 90 seconds. The words hit Catherine like a physical blow. Dead. She'd been dead. She'd built a billion-dollar company, had homes in 3 cities, a private jet, more money than she could spend in 5 lifetimes. And none of it had mattered when her heart stopped on that sidewalk. A bystander performed CPR on you until the paramedics arrived. Dr. Williams continued. That man saved your life, Miss Sterling. Without him, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Catherine's hand went to her chest, feeling the dull ache where those hands had pressed. Compressions hard enough to crack ribs, hard enough to restart a heart. Someone had done that. A stranger had knelt down on dirty concrete and fought to bring her back to life. And then he'd just left, disappeared into the city like it was nothing. Who was he? Catherine's voice came out hoarse but urgent. I need to thank him. I need to find him. Dr. Williams shook her head. The paramedic said he helped load you into the ambulance and then just left. They were focused on you, and by the time they thought to get his information, he was gone. Said his name was Jamal Washington. That's all they got. Catherine's hand gripped the bed rail. That's not possible. Someone must have seen something. Security cameras, witnesses, anything. Dr. Williams stood. I'll have the hospital administrator contact you about that. Right now, you need to rest. We're going to keep you here for at least a week for observation and treatment. Your heart took significant trauma, Miss Sterling. But Catherine was already reaching for her phone on the bedside table. Her fingers shook as she scrolled through contacts. She found David Ortega, head of her security team. He answered on the first ring. Miss Sterling, thank God. I heard about what happened. Catherine cut him off. David, I need you to find someone. A man, probably in his 30s, black, was on the corner of Lexington and 53rd last night, around 9. He performed CPR on me. The paramedics said he left before anyone got his name. I want everything. Name, address, background. I don't care what it costs. I'll get on it immediately, David said, without hesitation. Are you okay? Should I come to the hospital? Catherine looked down at the 4 in her arm, the monitors tracking her every heartbeat. Heartbeats she shouldn't have. I'm alive because of a stranger who didn't even wait around for a thank you. Find him, David. She hung up and lay back against the pillows, exhaustion washing over her. Someone had saved her life and asked for nothing. In her world of board meetings and stock options, of people who wanted something from her every waking moment, that seemed impossible. It seemed like a kind of grace she didn't know still existed. 3 days later, Catherine sat in her corner office on the 45th floor of the Sterling Tech building, pretending she wasn't supposed to still be in the hospital. She'd checked herself out against medical advice that morning. Dr. Williams had been furious. Catherine didn't care. She had work to do, and she had a file sitting on her desk. David had delivered it personally an hour ago, his expression unreadable. "You're not going to like what you find," he'd said. Catherine opened the folder now, her fingers still slightly trembling from medication. The first page was a DMV photo. Jamal Washington, age 37. Dark skin, kind eyes, slight smile like he'd been thinking about something pleasant when they took the picture. He looked tired but not defeated, strong but gentle. This was him, the man who'd saved her life. Catherine turned the page and started reading. Jamal Marcus Washington, born in Brooklyn, high school diploma, no college degree. Employed at Mason Brothers Warehouse in Brooklyn for the past 4 years. Also worked weekend security shifts at a Bronx shopping center. Widowed 3 years ago. Wife died of a brain aneurysm at age 32. Catherine's hand went to her chest, right where it still ached. One daughter, Destiny Washington, age 9. Attends PS 234 in the Bronx. Honor roll student. Current residence, apartment in the Bronx. Monthly rent, $1,400. Estimated annual income, $30,000. Outstanding debts, $3,200 to a funeral home for wife's burial services. $847 in medical bills from daughter's emergency room visit last year. The file went on, but Catherine had stopped reading. She stood and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. The trees were starting to turn orange and gold. Below, people jogged along paths that probably cost more to maintain than Jamal's annual salary. She'd almost died 3 days ago, and the man who saved her was working 2 jobs to afford a 1-bedroom apartment while still paying off his wife's funeral. Catherine's own childhood flashed through her mind. The tiny apartment in Queens where she'd grown up. Her father working 70-hour weeks at the dry cleaning business he'd built from nothing. Her mother sewing clothes for neighbors to make extra money. Dinner was often rice and beans, and new shoes were a Christmas miracle. Her father had built Sterling Dry Cleaning into a small empire, then pivoted into tech just as the internet was taking off. By the time Catherine graduated high school, they'd moved to Manhattan. By the time she took over as CEO at 35, Sterling Tech was worth billions. She'd forgotten what it felt like to count pennies, to choose between paying rent and paying debts, to work yourself to exhaustion just to barely survive. Catherine returned to her desk and flipped to the last page of the file. It was a photo, clearly pulled from social media, slightly grainy but clear enough. Jamal and a little girl, Destiny, at what looked like a school event. Both of them were laughing at something off camera. The girl wore a homemade costume, probably for a play. Jamal had his arm around her shoulders. Despite everything the file said about struggle and loss and debt, they looked happy. Genuinely, radiantly happy. When was the last time Catherine had looked that happy? She'd built an empire. Yes. She had more money than she could spend in 3 lifetimes. But her corner office suddenly felt very empty. That evening, Catherine did something she hadn't in 20 years. She cleared her schedule and resolved to find Jamal Washington, not to repay him with money, but with opportunity, recognition, and a chance to build the life his wife would have wanted for him and Destiny. 90 seconds of near-death had taught her life wasn't about wealth, but about giving, loving, and helping when someone was falling. Jamal had shown courage. Now she would show gratitude. She called David. Find everything on Jamal's kills, work history, recommendations. I need it by tomorrow. I'm planning to give a good man what he deserves.